Megan Edwards of Focus Communications, and today we're getting a company introduction to Cartier Silver, which currently trades on the Canadian Stock Exchange under the symbol CFE. And joining me today is Cartier's CEO, Tom Larsen. Tom, we appreciate you coming on the show today.
Megan, nice to see you again.
So Cartier has been very busy as of late. For our listeners, could you give us a quick overview of the company and your new acquisition in Bolivia?
Yeah, Cartier, the name of the company was at least Cartier Iron up until a few days ago. We transformed it with the two recent property option acquisitions, being silver related, just south of our flagship Iska, that's with our related company Eloro Resources. I'll give you just a little bit of a background of Cartier Iron quickly. Then you can understand, your listener can understand, the relevance of what we've just done for the completed for the shareholders of Cartier Silver, and why there isn't any sort of conflict with these properties being so close to the Eloro Iska. So if we go back to the inception of Cartier Iron, the former named company, publicly traded, as you mentioned, on the CSE. It was primarily set up as an iron ore exploration company. One of the properties from my former company, Champion Minerals, which is today called Champion Iron, symbol CIA on the Toronto Stock Exchange. It's a $4 or $5 billion share cap company under the leadership of a Michael O'Keefe, who I brought into my company, Champion Minerals, back in 2012-13 via a plan of arrangement combining two companies. And he took on the leadership of Champion that I founded in 2006. So it's done quite well. I really give him great, he did a fantastic job in really moving it forward in fairly trying times in the iron ore space between 2011, end of 2011 up until probably 2016. One of the properties, Champion Minerals, when I ran it, there was a property called Lac Penguin, which is what we called then in Cluster 3, about 120 kilometers from Tidewater by Port Cartier, where the ArcelorMittal pellet plant is. They own all the infrastructure in the Quebec side. But the Lac Penguin was a very, very interesting property from the standpoint it came from a fellow called Pat Sheridan, who initially owned these properties, these iron ore properties that Champion Minerals were involved in. But he didn't vend in Lac Penguin until a later date, wanting to make sure that we were able to make our payment commitments, obligations in buying out the initial iron properties in the Quebec Trough that we did under Champion Minerals. So we spun out one called Lac Penguin, and that was just when Mr. O'Keefe was coming in with his group to take over Champion. And so we spun it out into basically a shell of a company, and we activated it and name changed the shell to Cartier Iron. So that's how Cartier basically started up its life in roughly 2013-14 with this property. So from there, we spent a year and a half or so upgrading it. We took it to a 43101, this iron ore property, and it has in front of you there 531 million tons grading 33% in situ iron. And this is, again, very close to the ArcelorMittal's infrastructure. We own 55% of it currently, and Champion Iron, CIA, own 45%. Champion, by the way, is a large shareholder of then Cartier Iron, now called Cartier Silver. There's no actual major expenditures. We own it outright, 55% outright. So the carrying costs are very minimal. So we deem that right now as a legacy property. We sit back on that. We moved forward in 2015, 16 towards a project in Newfoundland that Dr. Bill Pearson, who's our head geo executive VP of exploration for Eloro Resources. Bill and I have worked together. We're very close. This is just a sister company that I've had Bill involved with as well. And he suggested that because we weren't getting any traction on the iron ore property, let's move forward with a property that he was familiar with in eastern Newfoundland called the Big Easy property, which we did. We spent probably $2-3 million in a drilling campaign to earn 100% interest on Big Easy. It's on the Avalon Trend, eastern Newfoundland. Bill was very familiar with that area, having spent time at the Hope Brook gold deposit that he ran in 2013-14 during pretty tough times. But he loved the low sulfidation type epithermal systems there. So we moved forward on that. Unfortunately, the geophysics looked great for target generation, but we didn't come up with anything really significant to get the market really excited. However, it's a very good land package, and we hope to JV it to someone at some point down the road. I decided, though, the share capitalization of the company was getting ballooned. We're up to 140 million shares. A lot of what they call Canadian flow through helped to finance the drilling, and I just realized that if I'm going to give my shareholder a fighting chance, including myself and everyone else in Cartier, we've got to sort of pivot and go in another direction. So we've completed work on Big Easy. We own 100% of it. There aren't any liabilities on that as well. We have assessment credits to last us the next 3-4 years. So we're fine with that. So we carry that on our books as well. So those are the two legacy properties that we have currently in Cartier. We also have roughly 2.2 million shares of Eloro Resources that came through working between Eloro, Cartier, and Champion over the last few years. So that's actually turned into, we picked those up well before Eloro's share capitalization moved up to 200-300 million market cap currently. So we're quite pleased to have that as a backdrop on our balance sheet. So because of the success that we were seeing in southern Bolivia with Eloro Resources, which is our sort of main event, we decided Dr. Osvaldo Arce, without Dr. Osvaldo Arce, we wouldn't be in Bolivia. He is so well received and well known, and was the fellow that basically found the Iska prospect for us back in 2019, and subsequent definitive agreement sign off in January of 2020, and the rest is history with all the drilling that's ensued with the Iska. I suggested to Osvaldo, can you find something in Bolivia that that isn't in in the way of Eloro, because they should have first right, but something that could make sense, again, sort of back end, bigger payments, something that won't break the bank, similar model to how we started in Bolivia with Eloro. Could you find something for us? Some properties that could show big bulk tonnage potential down the road, big systems. So he looked around. We set up a Bolivian sub about 8-9 months ago. And he basically finally this summer suggested two smaller properties right here. We're calling them the Chorrillos Silver Project, which basically comprises of the Felicidad that you see on the screen there, and just south, the Gonalbert. These are small property. The dimensions are small. One is only, I believe, 1 square kilometer. The other is only 1.5. The other is only 2.5 square kilometers. But they're in a very, very interesting area, just south of Iska to the sort of the southeast. But it follows that magmatic chamber, that volcanic corridor, right up to Iska, right through to Choroque and up to Tasna. 40, 50 kilometers north. This is the belt, the tin belt. These properties are in that tin belt. The reason Eloro didn't lock them up was simply that the owners, it's privately owned, which is, you save so much time and bureaucracy if you're dealing with private ownership, because they have the mining rights. You don't have to deal with Comabol, the state-run mining arm, which can be, it can slow things up at times, not always. But we ended up, the family that owned these two properties, the Segovia family, again, a respected family in the Tupiza district, 40 kilometers south. Tupiza, city of Tupiza, 30,000 people again. They also knew the owners of the Iska project, the Villegas family, and there's no animosity whatsoever. There's respect. But our lawyer, Pablo Ordane, who's on the board of directors for us, Bolivian legal counsel, on our Eloro board, it was strongly recommended that you don't mix those two families or families generally in one North American foreign public company. And that was basically the main reason why we said, okay, then can they be open for someone like Cartier? And so that was sort of the idea. Now, the other thing is that these are somewhat advanced. So, there's the deal's $4.5 million US. Iska is 10 million US. That has to be paid out by the, middle of 2024. We're down to about 5.5 million now on it. But in this case, it was 4.5 million US for these two properties. 80,000 in 6 months, 220 in 1 year, 500 in 2 years, 703, $1 million in 4, and 2 million in 5, the end of 5 years. We can walk away from this at any time. We can walk away from this in 3-4 months' time without making a payment. There are no share issuances, unlike at Iska, where we issued 500,000 shares to the Villegas family. No shares in this acquisition or this option agreement. You see there's no royalties, no set exploration expenditures. And again, these properties have never, ever been drilled, totally underexplored with, modern technology like geophysics and what we're very, very sort of proficient at it. When I say we, our technical team. So that's the crux of it. The other thing is, they would be, had those been in Eloro, even if we felt, okay, fine, bring the two families in. These have enough advancement that, Eloro has to stay focused on the Iska complex. We still are going after also that tin porphyry, which could be a secondary mining operation at Iska, complementing the Santa Barbara open pit underground, which you'll see in the first pass MRE that Bill's putting together with Mike on and with Oswaldo. That should be out in March of 2023.
So in Bolivia, you tend to look for some historic mining as initial indications of these new discoveries. Is there any historical work on this project that Cartier can build from?
Yes, and I'm going to show you right now exactly, because when you take a look at this area, there are some historic artisanal mining and very small artisanal operations. A lot of these properties were sort of owned by the old three tin baron families. Tin got wiped out in 1985. These families, this was just, macroeconomics, big discoveries over in China, Malaysia, cheaper way to do things. So some of these, now you take a look here, you see all those pickaxe sort of circular looking signs there. Those are all old sort of artisanal mining. And, all the way below Tupiza, all the way up from Tupiza to, for instance, Conalbert and then Felicidad. That's only 15, 20 kilometers away from Tupiza, about 15, 20 kilometers away from Iska. So, yeah, there's been some artisanal in this area. Iska had almost none. And that's why it was such a major discovery, because there was really nothing on surface that was detected in the oxides. Everything had been totally leached. This area further south was probably a little more conducive for artisanal type mining, with visuals on higher grade surface stuff. But I'll get into those properties in a sec. This is more important though, the system and what's underneath these properties. This is the type of system that we believe at Iska. We are doing geophysics on this as we speak, but we believe the tin porphyry that runs 1,000 kilometers south of Tupiza between Bolivia and Argentina, the border, all the way up into the northwest into Peru. That's the tin belt, 80 kilometer width, 1,000 kilometer length, 80 kilometers roughly crust, protecting that tin, and why it's there today, historically protecting it. So that is why we wanted to be in that sort of tin complex. And that's the type of system that we believe we're in with these two properties.
A similar mineralization to Iska?
I think it's, there's zonations throughout this. From what we've seen initially, there seems to be, higher pockets of silver at this stage, but it's still very early days. So this will give you an idea. There is some actual mining, small scale, or advanced artisanal going on with the Ganalbert property. Now this consists 10 grids. It's again 2.5 square kilometers. It's located 20 kilometers southeast of Iska along that trend. Small artisanal mining. They're doing right now, the Segovia family that owns this are doing roughly 20 tons a day. So it's very small. But they're averaging around 200 grams silver. And what they're mining is basically a subvertical vein, which is in basically galena, lead, and silver. And they have a shaft, vertical shaft of about 70, 80 meters in depth. And then there's some artisanal, there's some adits close by. So that's the type of operation that's going on with Ganalbert. The concentrates, they probably get 50% recoveries. The concentrates come in at around 1,000 grams silver. And I believe the lead's up to about 12%. And then Glencore, a subsidiary of Glencore, picks up the concentrate. Very small scale. Okay, but this is just saying that, and this is why Dr. Pearson suggested when he went on site about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, he was down at site because he and Charles Marawi, who's head of Micon International or senior geologist at Micon, they're doing our 43101 inferred resource and our initial 43101 report on behalf of third party, on behalf of Eloro. So Bill and Charlie went with Dr. Osvaldo Arce, who you see on the left, on the right slide there, and they went to visit the properties. So now they're doing a 43101. You have to physically be on these properties to do a 43101, an independent engineering company such as Micon. So that's underway. And then the fellow on the right is Marcelo, chief geologist for this project. He's worked with Bill for 30, 40 years. I knew him in the 90s when Bill and I were down in Ecuador. So that's sort of, they took a look at it. They spent the day there, and Bill emailed me and said, Tom, lock this thing up. Do what you can, get these things, even though they look small to me, and they weren't contiguous. So that's what I thought, okay, this could be great for Cartier silver. But again, you see Ordovician sediments, the 250 million year old rocks that were there, similar to Iska. And then you have this Miocene time period, the volcanic time period, 12 million years ago, that created all these sort of volcanic domes, dacitic domes, these breccia pipes. We don't know if there's breccia pipes on this particular area, but we do know it's a dome, which is like Cerro Rico. But this would be a very miniature Cerro Rico.
Yeah, so let's discuss the next steps, as Cartier has just completed a share rollback, announced a financing, and most recently staked these additional claims on the back end of the acquisition of the Chorrillos project. What can investors expect in the coming months from the company?
what we did was, because the share capitalization, I mean the share count, the outstanding shares, sort of escalated to over 140 million on the Big Easy and formerly the Lac Penguin iron ore, on the financings to drill and explore those. By the time 148 million, it's too much if you're starting again on something that could be advanced more so. And similar to what I did with Eloro. Eloro was a 10 for 1 back in 2014, 13. I've always believed, my background was brokerage back in the 80s. I've always believed in a very, very, give the shareholder a fighting chance, have a tight float starting off, not an Australian type 200 million shares trading at 5 cents with asset. That's not that doesn't attract me. So I've always been very careful before starting into these things that we have a good share count. And that was the point about when we locked in these two properties. We had already previously at a shareholders meeting last year that we had the optionality to post consolidate up to a 5 for 1, and also a name change. So that was already in the system, but we had an annual meeting regardless, and we basically, as of last Friday, a week ago, the share cap was post consolidated 5 to 1. So from 140 million shares, we currently now have 28 million shares. The stock itself, post consolidation, always traded, between 4 or 5 cents up to maybe 20, 22, but mainly in that trading range of 7 to 10 cents. So on the post consolidation multiplied by 5, it's been sort of sitting at around right now, since it's been trading post, at around 40, 50 cents. So 8 to 10 cents equivalent. And what we've done, what we're going forward with, we're completing a $3 million financing. There will be a 43-101 technical report that's being prepared right now by Micon International. I've basically completed the 3 million financing as we speak. That took 48 hours. That's how much sort of demand right now there is for this sort of idea, this Bolivian type, if you can come up with these properties. And I think, just to your point about it's not our skill set, it's the fact that we have Dr. Osvaldo Arce, who's so ingrained in that Bolivian, in the sensitivities of how to deal with a community, but also we're 100% Bolivian on the ground, for instance, and it's just very, very helpful. I mean, Eloro now has up to close to 500 square kilometers of ground. This one, we just completed another property, which is more greenfield. It just came, basically, we just, like similar to staking, we just claimed it. And that basically on the western flank of where Felicidad is to Gun Albert, it now connects on the western flank. We just picked that property up. So we now have around 14, 15 square kilometers for Cartier Silver. What we're doing, $3 million, that'll close December 15th officially. And then we're doing some geological mapping, surfacing, defining some epithermal systems from what we can see on surface. But then we get into the geophysics, which Eloro didn't have, back in when we first started drilling back in September of 2020. We didn't have the equipment down in Bolivia. It is there now. We will rent the geophysics, the IP, from Eloro, being 12, 14 kilometers away. Diamond drilling will probably start early, like with, conservatively, with maybe 1, maybe 2, probably 1 drill starting off, with Leduc drillers that are doing our drilling at Eloro. So that should start up Q1 2023.
Okay, well, once again, we want to thank you for coming on the show today, Tom. We're looking forward to hearing more from Cartier and your progress in Bolivia soon.
Megan, thanks a lot for having me today to introduce Cartier Silver.